Hello, this is Pam. Today I'm going to be discussing some new multiple sclerosis research that was just published not that long ago, just last month. And this research is talking about a potential new biomarker for diagnosing, especially like the progression of multiple sclerosis, like how quickly MS is going to progress in certain MS patients. If we haven't met, my name is Pam Bartha, and I'm the author of Become a Wellness Champion and the founder of Live Disease Free. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis over 35 years ago. By the grace of God, I learned early on that what I was dealing with is a parasitic infestation. I definitely did not know what we know today. That was over 35 years ago, but we have learned a lot since that time. So today, I really wanted to bring this to your attention because unfortunately, it just really helps us to continue to see, number one, how we are stuck in this gridlock. We're not moving forward. We're not even talking about looking for cures, but this is the type of research that's going on, and it really helps us to understand why we're not looking for a cure, why we're not finding a cure, and yet this information that the findings that they've had in this study really helps to provide more evidence that multiple sclerosis is caused by a parasitic infestation. So the study was published in the journal, or in the Nature magazine, or Nature Medicine, I should say, journal. And on the surface, again, it looks like they're trying to figure out like these lesions, like how can we determine why some people are going to progress more quickly than others. So they discovered a new, they call it a new type of lesion, but when you understand the basics of science, you'll see that it really makes a lot of sense why it would be caused by parasites. So again, on the surface, it looks like a new discovery, and it's really predicting multiple sclerosis progression. But as you dig a little deeper, the research just shows more evidence that multiple sclerosis is not an autoimmune, but it is an infectious disease. So this study was done by researchers in Finland, Germany, and the Netherlands, and they looked at the brains of at least 114 people that were living, that were MS patients that were living, but they also looked at subjects, MS subjects, confirmed diagnosis and died, but their remains were in brain banks for research. So they looked at 186 MS patients from brain banks and then 114 MS patients that were living. And what they discovered is that in people where the multiple sclerosis was progressing more quickly, they found a specific type of lesion, and that type of lesion, they found it much, much less in people that were not progressing quickly. So they basically picked two groups. They tried to control for different variables like age and all kinds of different things to try to isolate this one component, like why are some people progressing more quickly than others. So they discovered this distinct lesion, type of lesion, and they called it a broad rim lesion. The reason they called it that is because, so it has a broad rim, a thicker rim of immune cells, and they're called myeloid cells. And basically, it's just like a thicker concentration of glia cells and macrophages around the outer center, or the outer covering of each lesion. It's like a rim around each lesion, and it's thicker than other lesions. So it's kind of like there's more soldiers there, there's more military there, right? And so that's what they found. So with people that weren't progressing as much, they found very few of these lesions. And for people that were progressing a lot, they found these thicker rims, and they're called broad rim lesions. That's what they termed them. So basically, when they looked at some of the MS subjects that were progressing quite rapidly, at least 11 out of 17, they had about 65%. So that's about 65% of rapid progression of multiple sclerosis. They had these broad rim lesions. Whereas when they looked at MS patients that were progressing more slowly, they only found about 4% of this type of lesion. So 65% versus 4% is a significant difference in this type of lesion. And when you follow our work, it all makes sense, and it's so simple, and you don't need to spend millions of dollars trying to figure this out. But what they're trying to do, and this is not really helpful for us, is they're like, well, if we can figure out why, why certain patients are progressing more, what's the difference between them and people that are not progressing, then we could take the people that are progressing more quickly, and then we could use them for studying different types of immunosuppressive drugs, the same old story that we hear and we've been hearing for decades. But that's basically as far as they're going with this research. But I'm going to take this research and I'm going to help you to see that it's just more evidence that multiple sclerosis is an infectious disease. So they concluded that these broad rim lesions could serve as a biomarker to predict rapid multiple sclerosis progression. And of course, that makes sense, right? You have more immune cells fighting something. And of course, that is because if MS is an infectious disease, then your immune system is going to be fighting a little bit harder when you are having more symptoms and progressing more. So really what this study missed, a lot of things that this study missed, is why is the immune system forming these lesions and staying inflamed? Like, why is the immune system, why are all these cells migrating there, building kind of like this barrier to protect the brain from whatever is in the lesions? Why is the immune system doing that? So the researchers just say, well, it's just your immune system is dysfunctioning. It's autoimmune. We don't know why it's attacking your tissue, but it is just attacking your tissue for no reason. But we're not talking about like the immune system is like, we're not showing that the immune system is attacking your nerve tissue. We're showing that there's this broad rim of immune cells concentrated around certain lesions. And then we have to kind of look back, like, let's talk about common sense. Let's talk about like, what is the primary job of our immune system? It is to defend us from infections. That is its main job, right? And so they're like, our immune cells are our soldiers, and they come in, and when there's the enemy, they come in and they take out the enemy. They defend us from the enemy, especially in our central nervous system, right? We have all these nerves, like a lot of function is happening in our brain, like with nerve signals to the rest of our body. So it's really important for our immune system to protect that area. So if there's going to be microbes, infections, or we've talked about where we have small brain bleeds, which is known in MS too. And I'm not going to go into the details about that, but with the iron deposit that's been found and how every lesion is located around a blood vessel. So obviously, if we're going to have a rupture in the blood vessel, or if we have a leaky blood-brain barrier where things are moving into our central nervous system that shouldn't, yes, our immune system is amazing. It is going to create a barrier to contain the infection, right? So inflammation, again, is the war. It's where our immune system is battling the infections, the enemy. And if you think about inflammation, think about war. It's our immune system is trying to protect us, it's trying to defend us, it's doing its job. And there's lots of research to support that. And there's no research to say that the immune system is attacking itself for no reason. That is just a theory. It is an autoimmune theory that has been adopted in the 1950s or 60s. Before then, all the doctors thought that, and they knew that science showed that different types of infections, different types of parasitic infections, they cause inflammation. Our immune system fights them. It's just known, like, especially in animal studies and human studies. And then all of a sudden, there was a shift. There was influence in educating our doctors, and there was a shift from, oh, well, it's not infectious diseases, like diseases not caused by infections. Now, all of a sudden, our immune system is attacking various tissue in the body for no apparent reason. And now, decades later, like from the 1960s to we're at 2025, nothing has changed except we have a multi-trillion-dollar healthcare industry, unfortunately. And people are sick. They are losing their quality of life. They are not living long. They are ending up in care homes. It's brutal. That is why I'm doing this work. I'm trying to help bring the truth out. So these researchers, they're trying to say, well, these lesions with all the immune cells, it's just immune dysfunction. And it's like, no, let's look at it more clearly. So what they're describing is not immune confusion. It's a clear immune response to infection. And the primary job, as I mentioned, of our immune system is to defend us from parasites, to defend us from microbes that would cause us harm. And that's what a parasite is. And our immune systems are our natural defense. And this is why we don't want to suppress our immune cells out of the central nervous system, because the central nervous system is not a sterile environment. We need our immune cells there to protect us from infections, to microbes that get in the central nervous system. So these lesions, they contain all kinds of markers from like inflammation that our immune system is fighting. So our immune system is so complex. There are these molecules like cytokines and chemokines that are signaling molecules to signal certain immune cells to come in to defend us. It's like a very comprehensive defense system. And so these things are all found inside the lesions also. And also when there is like cell damage and cell death, and the immune system and is cleaning up the mess. So it's a very amazing, intricate defense system and maintaining health in our brain. We need our immune system so desperately. We do not want to suppress our immune system. And so all of these things are classic normal responses of our immune system to infection, especially to different types of parasites. So why this points to parasites? Well, for decades, research has shown that various parasitic infections can cause like the immune responses we're dealing with in MS and all chronic disease, but also lesions. And I'll talk about that in a minute. I've done so many different like live events and blog posts where I've shared all of this research. If you're new to this, make sure to look back on livediseasefree.com and look back on the topics on our blog posts, and you'll learn a lot about why you're sick. So again, research has shown that parasite infections or parasitic infections can cause different types of immune responses and lesions and neurodegeneration. And this has been known for decades, if not a century, like from veterinarians and researchers in animal studies, but also in human studies also. Let's look at a little bit of the research. So I share a lot of this on our website, livediseasefree.com. On the main menu along the top, you can click on it under research, and you'll see MS is an infectious disease, and there you will see various types of parasites that are linked with multiple sclerosis. So we'll talk really overview here. So for decades, it's been known that when we have MS and other chronic diseases, we've got fungal overgrowth. And they're finding, and so this was where I started. 35 years ago, there were doctors that wrote books, medical doctors that wrote books, and they were helping their patients to recover from multiple sclerosis and other diseases by treating chronic fungal infections. They thought it was just fungus, possibly thought other parasites, but they really didn't know. And they were kind of targeting fungus. But we do know that a lot of the antimicrobial herbs they used definitely help to treat various other types of smaller parasites also. So this was 40 years ago. These doctors were forward thinkers, and they really proposed that fungal overgrowth was a really big part of chronic diseases. So this would be doctors like Dr. William Crook, who wrote the book, The Yeast Connection. Also Dr. Orion Truss, that wrote the book, The Missing Diagnosis. Also the Dr. Zoltan Rona. He's a Canadian doctor that wrote the book, The Complete Candida Yeast Guidebook, and Dr. Luc de Schepper, who wrote the book Candida. So these are medically trained doctors 40 years ago that knew that infections were causing chronic diseases. They did not switch over to the autoimmune. They really understood that you can't have an autoimmune disease without having different types of parasitic infections. Back in the day, they were limited in their understanding, and so they felt that a lot of it was caused just by Candida. So that is how I started to learn about these infections, and I started to treat Candida early on. And now today, and many studies since that time have shown that people that have MS and other chronic diseases, they have a higher incidence of Candida infections. They have a higher incidence of Candida in the central nervous system, in their blood, and even in brain cells of MS patients. So it's quite common to see fungal overgrowth in MS. It's super common. It's probably like the vast majority of the time, it's one of the infections we need to treat. So that is one type of infection, and that has been really documented in science and with these doctors over decades. And so some of the practitioners today, especially the integrative ones, they understand the fungal component, whether it's yeast or mold, and they do try to treat that in their patients. But we know that like fungi can really produce a lot of different mycotoxins that are neurotoxins. They also disrupt neurotransmitters, and they cause chronic inflammation. Again, chronic war where your immune system is trying to deal with it but is not clearing it well enough. The next type of parasites that I want to talk to you about that are linked with MS is Borrelia. I've done a 6-part series on back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, they found, sorry, not Borrelia, I'm getting ahead of myself, that's malaria. Borrelia is the bacteria that causes Lyme disease, but there has been over 100 years of research linking Borrelia, or a spirochete bacteria similar to Borrelia, to multiple sclerosis. So they've been finding, like, from the 1911 up to the 1950s, they were finding this type of corkscrew spirochete bacteria in MS patients. They would even take blood from MS, or maybe it was spinal fluid, and inoculate it into healthy animals, and those animals would have MS symptoms. So it wasn't just that they found that bacteria in MS, but they were actually able to inoculate animals with that bacteria that they found in MS, and they were able to cause neurological symptoms in those otherwise healthy animals. They were healthy before they had that inoculation. So again, 1911 to 1939, and then all the way up to 1957, even in Time magazine, that's all listed on our research page. MS is an infectious disease. You can see all of that there. What happened to all that research? Where did it go, right? Because they know, and I've shared this on my masterclass training, that Borrelia, which is the bacteria that causes Lyme disease, it is in the same family as the bacteria that causes syphilis. And researchers know exactly how syphilis acts in our central nervous system. We have all of the symptoms of multiple sclerosis. And so if it's related to, it's a very similar type of bacteria, and it can get into the central nervous system also. It's been shown to be there by Dr. Alan MacDonald, not only just in the central nervous system of MS, but also right in the myelin sheath of brain cells of nerve cells in the myelin sheath of nerve cells of Alzheimer's patients. So he's documented that, and I've shared a picture of that in my masterclass training. So, like, it's ridiculous. Like, all of this research, every time I share it, I just get so fired up, and I wish Dr. Alan MacDonald would get a big, big award while he's still living, because he really deserves it. He's brought all this research out. Nothing is happening with it. Nobody is disproving him. Nobody is trying to duplicate his results. He didn't spend millions of dollars and years of research. He just got specimens from subjects of people that died, and had multiple sclerosis, got it from brain banks, and he just looked under the microscope. So how hard is that? He found many, many worms mating in clusters and eggs and larvae and all the guck they leave behind, all the waste material. He said it was really easy to find different worms in the central nervous system, which we're going to talk about, but he also found Borrelia, which we're talking about right now, that bacteria inside those worms, but also in the spinal fluid of MS. It was easy to find. So this bacteria, again, that causes Lyme disease, Borrelia, and I don't know if it's exactly because there's different species of Borrelia, but basically the exact same type of bacteria, corkscrew-shaped spirochete, found in MS in multiple studies over decades. And then it was all dropped. Why? Why was it dropped? Why fungus, like knowing that it produces some of the most toxic mycotoxins in the world, neurotoxins, toxins that are brutal to our nerves, why do they not look into that? Why has all that research been dropped? So then Dr. Alan MacDonald found, I should also mention Dr. Klinghardt, who's another one of my hero doctors that I follow. And he is a Lyme expert, and he has shared, because he works with a lot of, like, for sure, Lyme patients, but then people that have MS. And he said that with people, his patients that have multiple sclerosis, over 90% of them test positive through his energy testing, or ART energy testing, they test positive for Borrelia. So we see clinicians in the field that are finding that their MS patients are really dealing with a lot of Lyme. And then Dr. Alan MacDonald found Borrelia in the central nervous system of MS. And then the MS Society, I've talked about how on their website they've shared, like, there's a lot of confusion because people that have multiple sclerosis, they may have a lot of symptoms of Lyme, and people that have Lyme disease may have similar MRI results, and they have similar symptoms. So Lyme disease and MS, they have similar symptoms, they have similar MRI results. And so with all of the similarities, people might think, well, maybe I have Lyme disease, like maybe they're the same thing. And they're like, no, we assure you they're not the same thing. They're different. Why? Because some people that have Lyme disease and they use antibiotics, they recover. Some, especially the ones that are treated immediately. You get bitten by a tick, you get a high fever, you get really sick. They identify, oh my gosh, you've got Lyme disease, and we treat you right now. And yes, they can clear it. But if you have chronic Lyme, antibiotics don't work well. And so with MS, like if we have been infected with Lyme, it's definitely not acute. It's not something we've just had. It's something that it's chronic and we've had it for a while. It moves into our tissue. So antibiotics are not going to work. But I've done a lot of talks on that, and they are confusing the MS Society, because in one breath they're saying, oh no, antibiotics don't help MS. But then they have funded studies and they have shown that, especially early on with MS, that antibiotics do help. So, like, frustrating. That's all I can say, is really frustrating. So, move on to the next one. So, in the 1950s to the 1960s, doctors and researchers believed that infections caused all disease. That's so important to know. Many of us don't know that. They found all of these infections, the spirochetes, the protozoa, right, the candida, and later Dr. Alan MacDonald found the worms, and like they felt that infections caused, but then the new doctors that started coming in to med school, they're trained differently. And there's a family that really influenced and probably others, but one family in particular, I don't want to say the name, but they heavily influenced how our doctors are being educated. So they influenced the medical schools. And so unfortunately, our doctors don't believe that we could have parasites in developed countries. They're all around us, the parasites, but they're like, have you traveled to another country? Like, why do you think you have parasites? It's like, doctor, do you have pets? Do you deworm your pets? Your pets can get parasites. You don't think you could pass on parasites from your pets to you? Do you work in the garden? Do you know that there's parasites in the soil? Do you eat in restaurants? Do you know that you could get parasites from food that's not cooked, that comes in from other countries, that is grown in our own countries, depending on what they use for fertilizer, etc.? So parasites are part of our environment, and they have literally brainwashed our doctors to believe that parasites are not a problem in humans. What's crazy too is you'll have veterinarians that they're treating parasites in animals, and they're around sick animals all the time that are infested with parasites, but they don't treat themselves, which is crazy. And then they end up, I know just more recently, one veterinarian, and really sad, like was a horse breeder and loved his horses, and he was a vet and just had this wonderful life, on the farm, lots of land and horses, and he had to fire sell everything quickly because his health was deteriorating so quickly, and it's because he has parasites, and yet he doesn't realize that the very animals, the sick animals he was treating for years, he should have been deworming himself also. And they're just around more parasites maybe than we are, because they're around sick animals a lot more than we are. And sick animals are infested with parasites. So basically, when we switched from the concept that all diseases are caused by infectious infections to autoimmunity, this really was the birth of the autoimmune theory. And we've never dropped it since. It's going strong. It's very lucrative. It produces a lot of very expensive immunosuppressive drugs. And they never did disprove the infection theory. They just stopped looking. The expert panel that decides how MS is treated and how it's basically diagnosed, how we test for MS and how it's treated, they are not interested in looking at parasites. They find no value in looking for infections. They will only look at lesions. They will only look at bands of antibodies from lumbar punctures, and they don't care why the antibodies are there. They don't care why the lesions are there. It's not hard to look in the lesions. Like even in the early 1900s, they were actually finding, we didn't even talk about the different protozoa, but a malaria type protozoa, because they were treating people for malaria, and they found, oh my gosh, people with MS, they go on the malaria drug and it really helps them. More recently, I think it's the University of Calgary did a talk about this. They found that hydroxychloroquine, the malaria drug, really helped I think it's primary progressive multiple sclerosis. That's a malaria drug. And why does it help lupus? And why does it help arthritis? A malaria drug helps those. It's like, interesting. So like common sense, right? The immune system is fighting something. Common sense. Dr. Alan MacDonald found, as I mentioned, the small filarial nematode roundworms, very small ones, infected with Borrelia and possibly other parasites. He just looked at Borrelia, that bacteria, because that's what he studies. That's his expertise. He also found tapeworm larvae, the immature tapeworms. He also found in 2 of the 10 subjects developing tapeworms, like not just the babies in sacks, like the hooklets and just disgusting little, the babies of the larvae, but he actually found tapeworms that were starting to grow in the central nerve. Could you imagine the damage that would cause in your brain? Those are not little tiny like filarial worms. They get much bigger. So he should receive like a lot of honor for that and a lot of recognition and praise for all of his hard work. But his research is being suppressed. So all this research I'm sharing with you has been suppressed. It has been lost. It's still there. Anyone can find it. It's just online. You can find it, but it's not being talked about. It's not being further researched. I mean, there are places like the University of Calgary in Alberta, Canada, a great group there, and they are looking at, different types of bacteria. They're talking about dysbiosis, but it's very limited in what they're looking at. So in our community, in the Live Disease-Free community, our wellness champions that are recovering from multiple sclerosis and other chronic diseases, they are infested with large worms. Yes, they have to deal with candida. Yes, they have to deal with different protozoa like Babesia, and also possibly malaria and other protozoa that are similar. But they are infested with big worms. And it's shocking to me, and like they can be treating for several months and passing like hundreds of worms. And it's like, okay, what's going on here? Like, is it that there is something in their environment that keeps reinfecting them, whether it's pets, whether it's spouse, partner, but they're not as sick? Is it just the fact that if you think about the surface area of your intestines, of the digestive tract, it's like the size of a double tennis court. Think about in your mind a double tennis court. How many worms do you think you could fit on there, right? Thousands, like easily. So I think that what it is more that we, like our body is, I believe, designed intelligently by a creator, by God. It like we really don't understand the immune system. We know very little about the immune system. It's so complex. And for us to be able to be alive when we are infested with hundreds of worms, it's truly quite shocking. But all I can say is that they're not the only cause of MS, but when our students are passing these hundreds of worms, and many of them are, 2 to 3 feet long, and this would include like roundworms, giant, large roundworms, Ascaris roundworms, tapeworms, small and large, but also flukes. Flukes are incredibly pro-inflammatory. You can see pictures of these parasites. I'll go on to livediseasefree.com onto our blog post, and you can actually visually see what our students are passing. And it's really shocking. Like our students call them monsters when they're passing them, whether they're doing it through colonics, whether they're doing it through enemas, but they're treating, right? And the more infested we are, it takes longer to fully recover, but people notice improvements ongoing. And that's why it's so important for us to get this wisdom to our practitioners, to share this with them, to teach them what we know, to have them helping their patients early on before they have chronic disease. When they're just like, doctor, I'm not sleeping well. For some reason, I'm waking up in the middle of the night. I'm having a hard time falling asleep. I might wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's the witching hour for parasites. I'm dealing with anxiety. I'm feeling really anxious, and I shouldn't be feeling anxious, or I'm feeling really sad. I'm feeling really depressed. I have gut issues. I've got gas, I've got stinky gas, constipation. I'm loose or alternating, right? I'm feeling more tired. I've got a bit of brain fog. I just can't run up the stairs, skip up the stairs. I kind of drag myself around. Those are signs that our microbiome is out of balance. That's when we should be treating the parasites. And yes, we'll probably still pass a lot of worms, but maybe it'll be 200 worms instead of 1,000 worms, right? And then those worms, they carry their own parasites. They carry so many different types of bacteria, possibly protozoa, possibly even other smaller parasitic worms. You don't know. That hasn't been studied yet. But for sure, they carry a lot of bacteria, and they can carry protozoa. So they carry their own parasites. And so when we end up with these, secondary parasitic or bacterial infections, and we have fungal overgrowth, right? Because if they're depositing their waste in us, they're depositing their dead parasites in us. Fungus loves that environment. It's the cleanup crew. It's like the recycler of the world. So it's going to thrive in a dirty environment. And so maybe it's almost like a blessing that we have it, but then if it gets to be too prevalent, then there's too many mycotoxins that are really brutal too. So we have to really understand what's going on inside of our body and understand that it's so ridiculous that with these lesions, that it's like, oh, wow, they have a really thick band of immune cells around the lesion. I wonder what that could mean. It's just I guess our immune system is just going nuts a little stronger than if there was a thinner band of immune cells. It's like, duh, maybe it's doing its job. Maybe it is protecting us from infection. Let's get back to common sense. So we have the scientific research to show MS is an infectious disease. We have documented so many parasites that our students are passing. We have so many students that have recovered from MS and other chronic incurable diseases. They say they're incurable, but they're not. Go on to Live Disease-Free YouTube. You can watch their successes there. Bring some Kleenex. We share successes of people that are recovering, people that have recovered for years. We're coming up to our 10th anniversary next year. We want to celebrate. We want to celebrate the people that joined us in the early days, that had faith in us, that trusted us, that followed the plan, that worked the plan, that recovered, and now they've had years and years of living disease-free. Protozoa, which are single-celled parasites, have been documented with multiple sclerosis. So things like Plasmodium, which causes malaria, or different types of Plasmodium cause malaria. That's a type of protozoa. Babesia is common in multiple sclerosis also. And this is where our red blood cells become infected. They become sticky. They clump together. They block blood vessels. We can have microbleeds, which would cause, a rupture of the blood into an area of the brain. And then, of course, our immune cells are going to make a barrier to contain what has spilled into our brain. We need our immune system. It's so important. And so these are all talks that I've done. These are all blog posts. Go to livediseasefree.com. Start to see all this research. But I did create a one-page PDF with many links on it. And that was done maybe about a month ago. MS is a parasitic infestation. And you can give that one page to your doctor. You can hand it to him. But then if you want him to have the link so he can easily access all the research, then send him her or him the PDF so that they can click on links and quickly access all of this. So a lot of research is showing MS is a vascular disorder. There's so many different issues with our vascular system, and that would make sense if we have protozoa that are definitely infecting our red blood cells and causing inflammation in our blood vessels, causing blockages, all of that. Not rocket science, it's all common sense, validated in science. All of this was known in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and all this research was dropped. At least 75 studies, 75 peer-reviewed studies dropped. And also Borrelia, like there's many, many studies that were dropped. These are peer-reviewed studies. So what is it that these experts know today that they didn't know back then that they're not willing to look at? Why did they drop it all? Why did they not continue on with this research? Why did they not disprove it? Why did they stop looking? Because there is very little money in treating parasites. Toxoplasma, which causes toxoplasmosis. We know that it can form cysts in the brain. It disrupts neurotransmitters. I talked about the glutamate dysregulation, how normally it's a neurotransmitter that's regulated very carefully in our body, but with different infections like toxoplasma, but also I think the protozoa that causes malaria, it's been shown that this neurotransmitter that excites our nerves is not regulated properly, and it can cause like overstimulation of our nerves. It can cause our nerves to burn out. This is not just in MS, it's in several other neurodegenerative diseases, and this is documented. Everything I'm sharing with you is documented in science. So another huge thing is that I've shared another talk. Parasites are known to cause lesions in the central nervous system. I've done a talk on this. I've done a blog post on this, sharing different types of parasites that are known to cause lesions in the central nervous system. This is known. This is not Pam's theory. This is not make-up stuff. This is just documented in science. So it's just ridiculous. High lactate levels, so lactic acid, high levels of that in multiple sclerosis documented in blood and in spinal fluid. And that again is linked to the severity of disease. So high lactic acid, is that your immune system attacking itself? No, that's high lactic acid. That's something different. So that is another sign that like MS is much more than what they're trying to tell us, is that our immune system is attacking itself for no reason. So parasites are known to produce lactic acid, and also our immune system's response to parasitic infections. And I talked about that. I've done a talk on that. We talked about the glutamate toxicity. That's another one that I've talked about. And of course, like going back to lactic acid, when you have an acidic environment, that can really disrupt our minerals and our electrolytes, and that can also lead to mineral depletion, fatigue, weakness, skin issues, spasms, numbness, and many other neurological symptoms. The glutamate toxicity is really huge. I thought that was just in ALS, but it's in several different types of chronic diseases, and it can really damage nerves. It is also linked to different types of parasites, toxoplasma, plasmodium that causes malaria. And then I talked about MDA, which is another event that I talked about, another blog post, and that is a marker of oxidative stress linked to multiple sclerosis disability. And it is caused by parasite also. So why are they not looking at all these other things? Why are they just like, no, lesions, antibody bans, nothing else. We don't care why they're there. It should really frustrate you, and we have to bring change. So this is where you can start having conversations. Your doctor's not going to believe everything you say, but start asking questions. Say, did you know, doctor, that there are high lactic acid levels in MS? Like, why would that be if MS is just solely our immune system attacking our tissue? Why would there be disruptions in glutamate? Why would there be high MDA? Did you know, doctor, that parasites, that is documented in science, that parasites cause lesions in the central nervous system? Can I share that research with you? And if they say no, fine, go find a different doctor. But if they're like, really? I don't know, I'm skeptical, whatever. Just say, I'll send it to you. Take a look at it. I find it fascinating. Just be really light about it. Just ask questions. Start talking in different groups, in different MS groups. The only way things are going to change if there's a grassroots effort of people, number one, learning about this, sharing it, and then talking to their practitioners. And there is a growing awareness in people, but also in practitioners about parasites. The unfortunate thing is they just don't know how to treat parasites. They really focus on candida and Lyme disease, but they really are not skilled at treating the larger worms. And there's lots of reasons for that. They don't have good tests, they're not trained, and they don't know how to use the parasite treatments, many, many reasons. So what does this mean, this broad rim lesion or lesions that they're finding in people that are progressing more quickly with multiple sclerosis? They're becoming more disabled more quickly. So thus, when researchers recently found these broad rim lesions filled with immune cells, these macrophages and microglia cells, which are immune cells in the central nervous system surrounding damaged areas in the brain. And again, remember, there's always a blood vessel in the middle of these lesions, and that is linked with MS progression. What are we actually looking at? That is the big question. And so we're looking at the immune system is trying to wall off or build a barrier, right, to protect the brain from whatever is in the lesion, whether it's a microbleed. So there could be like red blood cells, there could be metabolites, from, waste materials, or like the blood is like feeding the body, it's bringing oxygen, it's taking away waste. There's immune cells, there's microbes that are in our blood, especially if we're not super healthy, if we have a compromised, leaky gut and dysbiosis. So our immune system is so amazing. We don't have a faulty immune system. We have an amazing immune system, and it's trying to defend us, but sometimes wars get out of control. They get out of balance. And so we need to support our immune system. We need to help out by decreasing some of the enemy. We have to help out by decreasing the toxins the enemies are producing. Support the immune system with nutrition and with sleep and with binders and with treating the parasites. And miracles happen. And it's not a miracle, but it feels like a miracle because people go, I didn't know I could feel this good. I have students that were dealing with parasites since they were in their teens, and some of them don't even have MS, but it's like, I cannot believe that I've had this for years and even causing brain symptoms and anxiety and affecting how I have relationships. And Dr. Amen is a brain specialist, and he'll say that a sick brain, we don't have the free will that we normally would have when we have a healthy brain. It can really impact our decision making. It can impact how we interact with other people. It can impact everything, our relationships, the work that we do, and of course, the physical disability too, right? That's another big part of it. But it impacts us on so many levels. It's so incredibly fascinating. So again, we're looking at our immune system, really trying to protect us, trying to block off whatever's in these lesions, containing infection, just like cysts would in the body, like when we have a cyst. And that's why these lesions are associated with progression. That's why they are filled with inflammation and oxidative stress. That's why these lesions persist even when we don't have active relapses. Maybe we're not having an active relapse, but we still have these lesions and they persist inside of us because there is still infection in there. There is still stuff in there in the lesions that should not be in the central nervous system. And our immune system is really trying to protect the rest of our brain. The immune system is not confused. It's doing its job. It's fighting invaders that the standard of care is not interested in researching. It's just so frustrating. So MS is not an autoimmune disease. It is an infectious disease. It is caused by a parasitic infestation. And when I say infestation, it just means we have a high level of parasites, more than somebody who has gut issues, right? If somebody has gut issues, but they're still healthy, they're functioning, or maybe they have cognitive issues, like a little bit of, depression, anxiety, or they don't sleep well, or they have gut issues, they have parasites. We are farther along with the level of the load of parasites in our body when we have an infestation. And because infections can be treated, recovery is possible. It is possible. And I don't know if I'd use the word cure, but because the thing is, you're never going to totally sterilize your body from these parasites. It's kind of like, think about your garden. Are you ever going to be able to eradicate all the weeds from your garden? No. You decrease the amount of weeds. Some are going to pop up a week later, but you decrease the number of weeds. You can feel like you've almost eradicated them, but there still are seeds in the ground. And so then once you have decreased the population of the weeds or the parasites, the weeds in the garden or the parasites in your body, you manage that for the rest of your life. So that's how I have been able to live over 35 years free of multiple sclerosis. I have worked at it. I still love animals. I still have them in my life. I still interact with people that probably have parasites in my family that are not treating like I am. But because we're not recognizing this in developed countries, we're not treating, we become out of balance. And if you restore balance, then it's about maintaining balance. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You can still have a few parasites and you'll be absolutely fine. And you can live your life. You don't have to restrict your life. You can enjoy nature. You can enjoy good food. But just like we do with our animals, we really should be treating parasites in ourselves. And we want to constantly build back our health promoting microbes all the time for the rest of our life, right? We want to keep building our natural defense, and we want to bring in diverse microbes from fermented foods where we have, the natural microbes that grow on things like cabbage that has not been sprayed or other vegetables, and you allow them to naturally populate through the fermentation process, and you're inoculating yourself with these health promoting microbes as you are knocking back the bad. And that is the key to recovery. It's not just exercise, it's not just diet, it's not just taking probiotics, but it's also decreasing the presence of these parasites in our body. So parasites are behind the inflammation, the lesions, the symptoms that we're suffering with. And now that's why we've rediscovered that what was once known decades ago. So when we rediscover this and we get our practitioners on board, then we can truly heal and we can truly recover like the wellness champions are doing. It's going to take years. You don't have to wait. You definitely can reach out to us, watch my masterclass training. You'll see that I have a very clear step-by-step process plan that we use. I share all the steps that we take. Your health is very important to me. I want you to recover. I've got the Live Disease-Free Diet guidelines on our website under research. You can start changing your diet. You can start having significant symptom improvements by decreasing the food to the parasites. If it's your immune system, diet wouldn't matter, right? It wouldn't matter if you decrease carbs because your immune system is not eating carbs. Your immune system is attacking your tissue, which is absolutely ludicrous. So the role of these broad rim lesions. So broad rim lesions, they are not just inflammation markers, they are battlegrounds. They are like where our immune system is like building a wall, building a barrier to protect our brain from the infections, from things that should not be getting into the brain. And the immune system forms a rim of cells, these immune cells, the macrophages and microglia around the infected tissue, and that would pose a threat for us. And this is the body trying to fight off infection, not attacking itself by mistake. So this is common sense. And this is why the MS drugs don't work, because they are targeting your soldiers. They are making us weaker. They are not targeting the infections that are making us sick. I'm going to go to your questions. All right, lots of great questions. I'm not going to be able to answer them all, but we will. I have just done 2 parasite Q&A calls over the last 2 weeks. I will try to go really quickly through here. So Darren, your theory is complete. Well, you know what? If you believe in the drugs, go ahead and do that. But a lot of people have tried that and it's not working. And so my theory is not based on theory. My theory is based on science. It's based on people recovering. And if you don't like it, you can use the MS drugs. This is a free world, right? A free country, free world, and you can use whatever treatments. I'm talking to people that are not happy with what they're dealing with. So James, thank you so much for your kind words. So parasites are there because the brain is full of toxins. It's trying to gobble up. No, actually, your brains are not full of toxins. There are toxins in our environment, but our immune system is our natural defense against toxins and parasites. And if you are healthy, so like Darren, honestly, like if you don't believe in this, you don't have to, just go somewhere else. Honestly, like if you can't see the research, I've got over 100 videos. I've got all the science. You can look up Dr. Alan McDonald's work. You can look up all the research, the 6-part malaria series, all the research. These are all scientists and practitioners and doctors. And if you don't believe it, use the MS drugs. That's absolutely fine. It's totally up to you. You're very welcome, Jolia. All right, and let's see, any other questions? So how do I get rid of these parasites? So Eugene, watch my masterclass training. So number one, we do some prep work. We want to be feeling better before we start treating. We change our diet, we decrease the carbs. You will notice significant symptom improvements if your carbs are low enough. Then we support the body, making sure daily bowel movements and sleeping well. We want to feel better before we start treating, and then we use a combination of parasite drugs, herbs, antimicrobial herbs, and also an oxygen type therapy. There's different oxygen therapies. Some are more cost effective than others, and they work really well at treating parasites in our blood and also in our large intestine. So all of that is explained in great detail in my masterclass training. There will be a link beside this video above or below it. Thank you for sharing. And Nick, you just started taking 2 parasite drugs to get all the parasites out. This is the unfortunate thing. A lot of people are desperate. They believe they're dealing with parasites and they're self-medicating. So ivermectin and fenbendazole are not going to get all the parasites out. Our students usually test well for 3 to 5 parasite drugs at one time. And so ivermectin will only treat certain types of parasites. Fenbendazole will only treat certain types of parasites. I know that there is this like really popular going around right now. So like there are these waves of popular, herbs or parasite drugs, or people are desperate. And I'm telling you, like, if you want to recover, you have to follow a plan. You have to get support to treat effectively. So if your goal is to recover from a chronic disease, then you need to use the parasite drugs that you test well for. And that might not be ivermectin and fenbendazole. So I've talked about it before, there's albendazole, there's ivermectin, there's nitazoxanide, there's praziquantel, there's niclosamide, there's parental palmitoate, there's fenbendazole. There are numerous different parasites that treat different types, parasite drugs that treat different types of parasites. And it's really a combination of them that is a more effective killing treatment. So number one, you could use the wrong dosages, you could hurt yourself, or you're not going to impact them. There's optimal doses. And then also ivermectin, and most of our students are not even using fenbendazole that are recovering from MS. It's fine to use it. It can be helpful for certain things like certain cancers. And yes, there are a small number of our students that are using it, but our students are not on the cookie cutter of that. So, and they would not recover. So if your goal is to recover and you're not recovering with this, just be careful, because you can make the parasites resistant. If you're using treatments at suboptimal doses, you can make the parasites resistant. So before starting protocol, how do we determine if a problem is a fixable one? In other words, how do we know it's inflammation and not permanent cell damage? And that's a really good question. So we thought that if you're in a wheelchair, like it was understood by doctors that you're in a wheelchair and you're not going to come out. What I can share with you is that we have many students that are in a wheelchair, and depending on how long they were in it, and it's more than even that, because some people, like Terry Kiley, one of the first students I worked with like years ago, like she was in a wheelchair for at least, I think, 8 years, and she had MS for several years after her mom died of MS. So in 3 months, she was out of a scooter, not a wheelchair, but a scooter, where other people, maybe it takes 12 treatment cycles. So it varies, and it has a lot to do with, are you using the right treatments? Are you implementing the plan properly? But the exciting thing is that people can have so much more recovery than they ever thought possible. There's so much that is just in the inflammation stage versus permanent damage to the nerves. I don't know what that is. We can't make promises, but when you treat parasites effectively, you will have more recovery than you thought possible. That's what we can share, but you have to treat them effectively. Just going on ivermectin and fenbendazole to me, it's dangerous, because like when I first was like one of the parasite drugs years ago with a naturopath. He gave me 3 days of ivermectin at a really low dose, and I didn't even know what it was. And I researched it, and I found, it can cause problems to your vision. And I'm like, I can't afford that, because I had terrible optic neuritis in my left eye, damage in my left eye. So I just put it away, and I found it years later in my cupboard. And so, like, you have to work with somebody. That is really important. And it's a real shame that our doctors don't know this. In time, they will. I am going to do everything in everything that I can do to help that happen. So we don't know. You wouldn't even be able to know with an MRI if something's permanent damage. But the exciting thing is that so much is not permanent damage. We've had people, like one lady had her hand clenched for 40 years. And then as she was treating, one morning she woke up and she was like able to start moving her hand a little. Then with physio, she could start using her hand. And that's 40 years. So I would say, no, you're not going to get function back in your hand. But she did. And so this is where I believe we know very little about all of this. And I believe that we are going to help people to have, like people that have been in a wheelchair for a long period of time, as we're getting better and better. The biggest issue we see is that the more disabled a person is, the more infested they are, then it's harder to get them to start treating, because when you start taking the parasite drugs, you can herx, right? Because it's like the parasites don't like it when you're treating. And when you start treating them, then the immune system recognizes them more. And so that's why the prep part is so important. And this is why the enemas are so important, because we're clearing parasites out of the large intestine. You wonder if Dr. Alan McDonald is continuing his research on this topic. He really is an expert in Borrelia. That's really his baby, like, of his research. They do have a website, and they have done a lot of research on Borrelia, finding even the spirochete in like developing babies, like how it can cross, like he's very knowledgeable in that. And I think he was asked to like look into, there was like somebody who had died, and he was asked to look at the remains of this person that died of MS. And then he looked at other brain banks because he could find the worms really easily. But those worms were full of Borrelia also, which is really fascinating. You're so welcome, Julia. I really hope that this gives you hope. I hope that this helps you to see that there is real hope for you. There is a solution. There is a plan out there to help you to treat the cause. There is a known cause, and this has been known for many, many years. Thank you, Kay, for your kind words. But I can't do this by myself. So she said she was following vegan diet, and she changed her diet. I'm not against the vegan diet, but all I know is that when you're infested with parasites and you're eating a really high carbohydrate diet, which is a vegan diet, that really benefits the parasites. They love the carbohydrates. They love the sugars, the simple carbs, the complex carbs. So a vegan diet does not work when you have a parasitic infestation. And so you're very welcome. Thank you for all your kind words. So how do you get rid of parasites? Again, I shared that. Watch my masterclass training. I share all the steps there, like in detail. And if you can't find a practitioner, if you talk to your doctors about it, if they're not willing to help you, if they don't feel you have parasites, if you go through my blog post and you really build up the belief, you're like, Pam, this is exactly what I need to do. I'm struggling because I can't find somebody to help me, but you believe this is the direction you need to go, then watch my masterclass training. If you need my support, you can, at the end, you can fill out a form. You can talk to me if you really would like support, if you're ready for a plan, if you're ready to be a wellness champion. And you can also watch the coach-a-thon before we talk, because that goes into more detail. And then when we talk, we'll make sure it's a good fit for you. We'll just go through everything. I want to look at your health history. If you decide you want to work with us, I want to get you off to a good, strong start. And you will love the support we have. the community of wellness champions that we're working with, they are truly leaders, trailblazers. Like, it's such a breath of fresh air. Every week, the successes that come in, it's truly like Christmas to me. It is life-changing, putting tears in my eyes, and it's such an amazing community to work with, and it will completely change your life even before you have all the success yourself. And you can start having significant improvements just by starting the diet, and just by, even if you can start the oxidizing enemas, you can start passing parasites. So one student just very recently, within less than a month, that started 9 days on the diet, 3 or 4, maybe 4 to 5 enemas, passed a bunch of worms, shared those parasites with me, and she literally had a hand, her left hand, that was not functioning. She was able to actually start typing again. She has a Harley Davidson bike. She could actually start, pushing on the clutch again. She could go up and down ladders. So improvements in her balance, in her strength. And that's literally just in like 2 weeks at the most. Not even. There's no drug that will do that for us, right? And that's, again, not targeting our immune system. It is supporting. It's starting to take pressure off the immune system. Okay, more questions. Thank you for all your kind words. Do you take any dewormers or just diet? No, the parasite drugs are helpful. The oxidizing agent is helpful. If you want to learn what that is, you can watch my video, Treating Parasites with Oxygen Therapies. Just do a Google search, Live Disease Free and Treating Parasites with Oxygen. I can't see the name of it here because we will be censored, but I talk about what it is, and you can find out more about it. So it's a combination of, number one, being ready to treat, feeling a lot better, feeling a lot stronger, and then we use the combination of parasite drugs, herbs, and oxygen therapies. The parasite drugs on their own are not a magic cure. You go on that, like what some people are doing, ivermectin and fenbendazole, you're not going to recover from MS. I wish you could. I would tell you if you would. I would write a book and we could cure the world, but it's not going to. If you want to recover from MS, you have to use a strategic combination of parasite drugs, 3 to 5 at least, and then also the oxygen therapies and also antimicrobial herbs over multiple cycles. Thank you. Is it tall cedars? How do you kill tapeworms in the brain? You'd have to use a parasite drug that crosses the blood-brain barrier. If you are treating, so like things like albendazole and praziquantel will cross the blood-brain barrier, but be very careful. You've got to work with somebody. You can have significant Herxheimer reactions in your brain that could potentially be fatal, right? Especially for people that have seizures, a history of seizures. So this is where a practitioner might prescribe a steroid on the 3rd day of treating with parasite drugs that cross the blood-brain barrier. So KU took several rounds of antiparasitics and heavy metal detox, plus a carnivore diet, low keto diet. So I don't know if you have recovered, but we're talking about recovery, and I'm so glad you're on the right track. So fenbendazole, it has its place, right? It has its place for certain parasites, but it's not the end all be all. Be really careful with zeolite. A lot of zeolite, especially liquid, will contaminate you with aluminum. Aluminum is very toxic. So I personally wouldn't use zeolite unless you know absolutely certain that their product has been tested by third party to make sure that you're not going to get aluminum toxicity from it. All right, I'm going to let you guys go. There's a lot more questions. Thank you so much for your comments. Go ahead and type your questions in the question box, but please just make sure that you research this, make sure that you start to go in a different direction, start to take responsibility for your health, start to talk to your practitioners, start to talk with other groups, but make sure that you get the support that you need and follow like a proven plan, either working with a practitioner that has wisdom in this area, or if you need support, reach out to us. We have different programs. We can help you in different ways. We will do whatever is best for you. So with that, please like, share, and subscribe to help us to get the word out. It really helps to push this video out to more people so that we can bring change. And talk to your doctor about this new research and really start to ask questions. Just ask questions. And if they're curious, then share information with them. Otherwise, we will talk to you next week. Take care and bye-bye for now.